Hello, and welcome to another episode of Mad Scientist Brewing Beer Education Series. In a previous video, we looked at different ions found in water which can influence the mash step of the beer as well as its flavor balance. Calcium, magnesium, and bicarbonate affect water hardness and alkalinity, while chloride, sulfate, and sodium affect beer's flavor. For all grain brewing, the first three ions are important to monitor for the mash phase in order to achieve the appropriate pH in the mash, which is ideally between 5.2 and 5.6 to get the most activity from the various enzymes in malt. In modern brewing practices, brewers may either use the water from their local supply and treat it with brewing salts like calcium sulfate and calcium chloride, or may treat their water through a deionizing system to remove everything except for water. In that case, the brewer will definitely add brewing salts to get the right taste profile and mash pH dialed in for that specific beer. The natural water supplies of different cities have historically affected the type of beer which has been produced there. This table shows the water profiles of several brewing cities. You'll notice that Pilsen has very low mineral content, which is important for pale beers to stay within the desired mash pH range using lightly kilned malts, and so Pilsner became the dominant style. Likewise, Dublin is particularly high in bicarbonate, which raises the residual alkalinity and would make the mash pH far too high if brewing pale beers. However, the use of acidic roast malts brings the mash into the right spot and favors the brewing of stouts. The reality, though, is that this is not the full picture. These water profiles represent the natural water source for the city, but don't cover how brewers handled the water during the process. Brewing water was often boiled ahead of time to precipitate out bicarbonate, which led to a much lower residual alkalinity, so that cities like Munich could still brew their light Helles-style lager. The Guinness Brewery in Dublin also drew its water not from the city, but from the Wicklow mountain range to the south, and so its bicarbonate levels were much lower than many other Irish breweries, and can account for some extra level of acidic bite that Guinness Draught has. When brewers want to mimic a certain city's water profile to replicate a beer style, it is best done with a grain of salt. What is most important is maintaining proper mash pH and concentration of flavor ions to flavor beer, but not so much as to introduce mineral or salty flavors. The table in the previous video on water highlights that. The last thing to touch on is something that John Palmer, brewing water guru, has put together for building water profiles called the Palmer Brewing Cube. A brewer can use this diagram to look at how to adjust their water profile for a certain beer style. Here are two examples. Let's say you want to brew a hoppy West Coast IPA. This is a pale beer with a hoppy flavor and medium structure. Aligning these factors on the cube, you can see that it will have a target calcium level around 100 ppm, a residual alkalinity around -100, and a sulfate to chloride ratio of 4:1. Starting with deionized water, a good addition of calcium sulfate with some chloride addition to round it would get close to that target. Now consider a dry Irish stout. This will be a malty beer that is dark and with a firm structure. In this case, the calcium level will be 150 ppm. Residual alkalinity will be around 100, and the sulfate to chloride ratio will be 0.5 to 1. In this case, the calcium addition may come largely from calcium carbonate if using RO water, or another carbonate source to lower alkalinity, while also using calcium chloride and calcium sulfate to a lesser extent to hit the target. Again, this is all done with the end goal of getting the mash pH in the target, based on the expected ingredients for the beer. Alright, that is the end of the video for today. Until next time, cheers.